drawing lines and shapes, with writing their name, writing letters? Well, hi, I'm Cindy from Your Kids OT, and today we're going to be looking at how to help those children who are stuck in the scribbling phase or just don't know how to put their lines together to make them look meaningful, help them to represent a picture or letters and numbers. There is a developmental sequence that we expect children to be able to accomplish, a progression that we work through to help children before they get to their letters and numbers, in drawing, in imitating initially, and then drawing and copying lines and shapes. So simple things like horizontal lines, vertical lines, diagonal lines, squares and circles, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later in this video when I show you the drawing. It only becomes a bit of a red flag and something to be aware of when your child is 3 or 4 years of age and they're still not able to draw those simple lines and shapes. They might have some underlying issues that need to be addressed by an occupational therapist. So do seek one out if you suspect that they're having these difficulties. I'm only going to briefly touch on some of these underlying issues in this video. So do subscribe to the channel if you want to find out a little bit more, or check out my website www.yourkidsot.com, and I've got lots of this information already on my website. Some of the difficulties your child might have if they're not able to draw or to draw simple lines and shapes might include visual spatial skills. They might have a lack of understanding of how things relate to each other, objects relate to each other, and how things pictorially relate to each other in a 2D form. They might have difficulty with their fine motor skills. They might have difficulty with pencil control and pencil grasp and how they manipulate what they're using to draw with. They might be not motivated because they've had so much difficulty. They might not understand that the 2D representation on the page has a meaning. They might be still learning about objects, so haven't transferred those skills into drawing on a page. They might have difficulty with language and understanding direction, like on or under or next to or besides. So I've got lots of ideas today to help your child who might be stuck and just not able to get started with their drawing. I'm going to switch over to the camera to show you from a top-down view some of my ideas. As I mentioned before, there's a developmental progression that we expect children to achieve as they learn their lines and their shapes for drawing. The first is to be able to imitate a vertical line, a horizontal line, and a circle. And imitating means being able to watch you do the drawing and reproducing it themselves. The next progression is to actually just to see the vertical line, horizontal line, and circle and produce it without watching you do it. The next shapes also include the horizontal vertical cross, diagonal line, a square, another diagonal line, a diagonal cross, and then a triangle. So there is a bit of a progression as to what we expect children to be able to achieve. And it comes from an understanding of how lines fit together to form meaningful shapes and eventually letters and numbers as well. Now your child might be stuck on the scribble phase. They just can't copy those lines that we expect, or can't draw a picture that represents something. And that's what we're going to be looking at today in this video. So what I would say is to start with objects. So you might use something like a button. I'll just turn the button around and encourage your child to perhaps draw from one target to the next. So can you draw from the heart to the teapot? And you might have a few hearts and a few teapots to draw to. Can you draw from the heart to the teapot? Now, for some children, even that is too hard for them. And you might need to add more objects, more visual prompts, more physical prompts. And I like to use wiki sticks, but you could use Play-Doh, a ruler, a stick, anything you like, and ask the children to join the two objects with their wiki stick. So they might even go like this to join their two objects together. Now my wiki sticks are starting to lose their stickiness. And then say, let's draw from the heart to the teapot. From the heart to the teapot. And in this way you can start building on a few different lines. So you might then change the position of those hearts and those teapots and say, can you join the heart and the teapot now? Now, children who really struggle with even these extra prompts might need physical assistance to draw those initial lines. You might use the objects to also guide going around. So you might say, can you draw around those buttons? Or can you start making patterns? Can you draw up and over? Can you draw under? And keep going. So objects are a great way to provide that physical prompt, that visual prompt to help your children knowing where to draw their lines and shapes. Providing a multi-sensory experience can also be a really motivating way to help children learn how to draw lines and shapes, and it provides a way of feedback to the muscles and joints as the child draws. I've got a tray here of Kinetic Sand, but you might use rice or salt or shaving cream, and you might use items like a toothpick or a paintbrush. You could continue to encourage your child with objects, so you might lay out the toothpicks and encourage your child to draw through the sand to get from one to another. And as you can see, there's a bit of resistance when I draw in the sand, and that is what is providing that feedback for the child as they learn how to join things together. They can work on things like diagonal lines or shapes. And here they learn the motion, what they actually physically need to do to form that line or shape. This is another great tool to provide some sensory feedback as a child is drawing. This is called a magnet tab, and they're made up of little magnets. Children love to see those magnets, and they can also use their finger. You might ask a child to copy a line or just to concentrate on getting those basic lines and shapes. Another way is to provide something like sandpaper, grit paper. The child can draw along that paper and get some sensory feedback as well. You can cut it to various shapes. You can't see it very well in this video, but you could try different shapes. And the other thing I like to do is use glitter pens and draw a glitter line for a child to trace over the top. Glue also works really well for that. Another high contrast thing is just to use different coloured paper cut into different shapes, and the child is encouraged to stay on the shape. Now, once a child is able to understand that their lines and shapes form different patterns, you can perhaps move on to copying some more complex lines and shapes. So I've just got a few here. This is from my Fluency pattern sheet that I'll link below. But various lines and shapes can be expanded to work on the spatial awareness when it comes to drawing. And then you can move on to some guided drawing. Guided drawing can be a really beneficial way for children to learn a bit more complex drawing once they move from basic lines. And helping them to work out how those lines fit together. So a simple one to start with is just the sun. And developmentally, children will join the lines to the circle to start with, and that's okay. You might move to a face. So doing the circle together. And this is really helpful for children who are still imitating and they can't just look at a picture and reproduce it. They need that modelling to reproduce something that looks recognisable. So a face is really often very motivating, and you can talk to them about each step that you're doing. I like to even include another aid next to us, another visual prompt like Play-Doh or felt or something else that we can build on at the same time as drawing. And it just gives lots of different information to provide the child with clues as to how things fit together. So another way to do guided drawing is just to do one step at a time. For circles, I usually start with circles. A simple spider's web. Let's draw a little circle. Let's draw another circle around that one. Let's draw another circle and an even bigger circle. And let's draw a straight line down and a straight line across. And how about we add some extra lines through the middle of the circle? Well, mine's slightly off to the side of the circle, but that's okay. Look, we've made a spider's web. And we might even see if we can add a spider. Let's draw a round oval shape. And we've got one leg and two legs and three legs and four legs. And on the other side, we've got one leg and two legs and three legs and four legs. And the spider's coming from the sky, from the ceiling. And we'll add a little smiley face. So guided drawing is really useful even before you give children picture sequences. So the next step would be to provide printables or a worksheet that has those sequences already set out for them. So there might be, a guided picture of a cat, but the child hasn't worked out yet how to follow the sequence for the cat. They might need you to draw each step for them, and then they can move on to a visual picture sequence where the first picture shows a circle, they reproduce the circle. The second picture might show one circle on top of the other, and they can reproduce that. So I wouldn't jump straight into giving a child a worksheet, but tracing it can be beneficial as well, where you're encouraging the child to look at what is happening on the page and reproduce, trace over the top of the lines given. This is when a child is really beginning to take notice of the visual cues on the page with that attention. And you might encourage them to do it in different colours, sort of like rainbow drawing. This example here is from one of my printables that I'll also link in the description box. But I wouldn't stick to just tracing. I really like to encourage children not only to trace, but to reproduce those shapes by themselves. So have a look at what's on the page and actually have a go themselves. Putting those lines together is a really important part of developing the visual motor skills and the pencil control needed for writing light letters and numbers. So decorating the page beyond just the tracing and the colouring in. Colouring in is wonderful. It's a great way to build up those fine motor skills and the pencil control skills of push and pull. But if they're just colouring like this, then they're not really paying attention to the visual cues that are on the page. We really want to encourage control and colouring in the lines, and that's why we bother with colouring in the lines. And as well as that, noticing what is happening actually on that page. So this is a circle, not a square. And how do we reproduce those patterns? And can we make that pattern over here? So these are just a few of the examples that I've got in this printable set. So let's make some popsicles, make some ice blocks together. We can trace it, we can draw lines, we can colour in. Oh, my green's running out. Or we can try and do the shape ourselves, which is where, as I said, those visual spatial skills really develop. Well, I hope you've got lots of ideas there that you can take away and implement straight away to help your child who might be having difficulty with drawing lines and shapes. Don't rush your preschoolers into writing letters and numbers. Help them to build those foundational skills that are so important in terms of pencil control, in terms of visual motor skills, and putting those lines and shapes together so that they mean something. So when they do come to learning how to write letters, it comes easily for them. If you've got a child who's a bit older who is struggling with letter formation in kindergarten or year 1, go back and do some drawing, do some guided drawing so that your child can build the confidence they need to succeed in their writing. Thanks again for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next